Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday, September 15th, 2020, and you have tuned in to the Rebel News live stream. I'm David Menzies, and my lovable co-host, as always, every Tuesday and Thursday in this space at this time is Sheila, the she-devil Gunn Reid. How are you doing there, Sheila?
David, I'm great. I'm still riding high from attending the Integrity March organized by the CCFR on Parliament Hill.
What a day.
What a day. Such a fun day.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, you know, again, you and I say it all the time. I can't believe we get paid to do this, but like I was in the zone. Those are my people. I was just so excited to be there and talk to everybody. And people were really excited to see us there. Like a lot of people were like, hey, you came all the way from Alberta. Of course I did, because you just can't trust the CBC to tell the truth about these sorts of things. But yeah, it was so much fun. And, you know, it really refuels your batteries after covering, you know, terrible stories like, you know, when I'm covering the work that People versus Predators is doing or government waste. And it's you can get sort of demoralized a little bit because the world can be an ugly place. But when you go there and you're with 5,000 Canadians from all across the country, all walks of life, new Canadians, old stock Canadians, just everybody, mums, dads, business owners, sports shooters, airsofters, immigrants. It was fantastic because all those people cared about freedom and property rights and making sure that cops get to focus their limited resources, especially in the time of defund the police, on actual criminals and not duck hunters and beer can plinkers in the backyard.
Yeah, and you know what? I really want to take a deep dive into that rally that you covered and as well as others, Sheila. But before we do so, we must tell people what it is we're attempting to do here.
I know. Can you tell I'm still excited? After the weekend, it was on Saturday, and I'm still excited. It was just so much fun.
Take a screenshot, folks. This is what Sheila Gunn Reid looks like when she's excited.
David. Anyway, what we're doing here, normally Ezra hosts Monday, Wednesday, Friday. David and I host Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes someone subs in for us if we're busy because, you know, it's a busy world with more news than ever, despite what CBC would have you believe. And this is a chance for David and I to interact with each other, which is great. We're on other sides of the country, but we're still, I think, great friends. And David, I was very worried about you last week, by the way, after you got chewed by a dog. And I'm glad to see that you're better and back at work.
Well, thank you.
But it also gives our viewers a chance to interact with each other in the live chat, which is fun and great. But it also gives our viewers a chance to support the work that we all do at Rebel News through something called a super chat. If you click the little $sign at the bottom of the live chat, you can throw some money in there. It'll highlight your comment to the top of the screen. I will see it. Mr. Producer will see it. The entire live chat will see it. And we'll read it on air. If it's a question, we'll do our best to address it. If it's a topic you want to suggest to us, great. If it's just a comment you want to make, or if you just want to throw some money at us to support the work that we do, no comment, maybe send an emoji, we'll accept that too. But it's a great way to support us with, you know, with your own free will, as opposed to what CBC would do to you, take $1.5 billion of your hard-earned money to basically misreport almost everything that's happening in this country.
Oh, well, I don't know about that, Sheila. I'm looking at some data here about the number of times, and I'm not making this up, folks, that the CBC made mention of Trudeau's socks. And the number of times CBC made mention of Trudeau's hair. It actually, the numbers are greater than any kind of like cabinet minister being criminally charged, for example. So, you know, Sheila, bread and circuses, the people don't want bad news all the time. They want CBC to portray their, I guess, financial benefactor in a positive way, don't they?
If anybody wants if you want to change hearts and minds, might I suggest the missionary work of showing your friends the headlines over at CBC Kids? Because it'll take people who are indifferent to CBC into true believers of defunding the CBC and salting the earth where the CBC building stood, because it is just a plague upon this nation, the things that go on at CBC Kids. Like, it's cuties level sexualization of kids and introducing these bizarre sexual concepts to, like, preteens, little kids, tweens. It's gross.
You're quite right, Sheila. If we contrast the CBC's kids programming, I think about what I grew up watching when I was a young one. The Friendly Giant, Mr. Dress Up.
Mr. Dress Up.
But there was a wholesomeness to this.
Yeah.
And it was completely apolitical. And, they were endearing hosts. And now everything that this broadcaster does, even as you said with kids, it's with an agenda. It's with a political or ideological agenda, even with kids. Well, actually, I should say especially with kids, Sheila, because if you look at Marxist doctrine, as you know, get them young, get them forever. So it's good to get the wee ones indoctrinated while they're still fertile minds to cultivate, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, school year with no sports, not for these teens. Okay, that's the least offensive thing that happens on there. They're writing laments for the We charity, waving goodbye to Canada. I mean, it's just
laments.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We charity waves goodbye to Canada. U.S. wildfires are turning the skies red. What's happening? Of course, climate change. You know it.
Yes. As opposed to forest management, and it's Donald Trump's fault. Did they get that in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nope. It's it never ends over there.
Oh, it's just misery.
If you Google pride on there, let's hit search and Google pride.
But I didn't see that We charity waves goodbye to Canada. I mean, surely, Sheila, the headline should read, "Good riddance." This is a real estate development company, as far as I can tell. Heck, we went down to Queen and Parliament and Queen and Berkeley to show all the properties that this charity is investing under the, context that this is money being raised for third world countries and children in it. And the fact that they got their hands caught in the cookie jar and were exposed, this is something that we have to lament. That's incredible.
I just plugged in pride into the search engine on CBC Kids. I know this wasn't something that is on our list of things to talk about, but at least it's not wrestling, Justin. So just whatever. Watch. Dear Harry and Meghan, here's why you'll fall in love with Canada. Timeline, 50 years of LGBTQ pride in Canada. This one is like I read this as a Catholic with kids in Catholic school, and I can't even believe that someone wrote an article on this. Student speaks out against lack of pride flag at Catholic high school. Yeah, that's why your parents send you to the Catholic high school, so they don't have to worry about the pride flag being flown. Pride 2020, how one teen celebrated virtually. So we've shoehorned COVID, social distancing, and pride, and sexualizing teens into one thing. So good job. One headline, CBC. Well done. Good for you.
Sheila, you can't go anywhere, at least in this city, without seeing a pride flag. In fact, when I was in St. Michael's Hospital last week, the first thing that greets your face in the waiting room is a big pride flag. I mean, come on, let's be honest. This has gone from the love that dare not speak its name to the love you can't shut the hell up. I mean, that rainbow is everywhere. And, I get it. If you want to go to a pride march, if you want to, celebrate Pride Week, I think it's now Pride Month. But now it's just, I can go to buildings in the downtown core that the poor rainbow flag has faded out. It's up there all year long. So, this is just incredible. And also to look at through the lens of
kids. This is all through kids.
Yeah, and where are ex-Royals going to go? And the number one thing on the agenda is, where am I going to see the most pride flags? Jeez.
Family photo on Instagram sparks conversation about gender fluidity. I don't know if people were watching at home and you saw me looking around my office about a minute and a half ago. I was looking for my pickle jar of holy water because I feel like the computer needs it beside it. Watch. Drag kids sashay their way into the spotlight. Nope. No. But that's on CBC Kids.
Doesn't
what? Drag kid.
Drag kids. Unbelievable. Back in my day, that would be kids making go-karts to look like drag racers. But now drag kids, totally different meaning. And by the way, Sheila, when you refer to gender fluidity, doesn't that kind of sound to you that you need to be wearing an adult diaper or something? I mean...
All of this stuff, I don't care if you want to talk about it. I don't care. But why is this targeted at kids? And why do I have to pay for them to target it to kids? Put this on Pink News or whatever social justice website keeps this stuff. But why is the taxpayer paying for stories about kid drag queens sashaying their way into the spotlight? I don't know. It's just,
well, Sheila, if you were to ask that question to the poobahs at the CBC, they would undoubtedly shout it down by labeling you as a homophobe / transphobe, and the conversation is over. But you're right. Yes. We went off on a completely different tangerine there. I guess, what would you like to talk about first, my friend? Was it the Trinity Bellwoods story or your trip to Ottawa?
Let's talk about you, because our very first super chat is about you. It's from Liard Kintyre, gives us $5. David, I hope you're well after that dog attack. Was the owner charged? If it was a CBC reporter at an anti-mask protest or a gun rights protest, I know what would happen. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I do have updated information for you, sir, and thank you for your kind words. But maybe, Mr. Producer, should we run a little video of that before we do? And just in case you missed the video, folks, here's what happened. And afterwards, I'm going to give you a quick update of what fell out in the meantime. This is really rich. There are people here breaking the Trespass Act.
Please move. I don't like myself being filmed. You don't have the right to actually smash that camera right now. I wouldn't do that. I have the right to smash that camera.
Don't do that.
By law, I have the right to smash that.
You have the right to smash that camera by law?
Yeah, by law, you know I have to
smash that camera. What law are you quoting? Yes, please, sir. Why are you guys bugging me?
Get over here.
Yes, this degenerate seemingly... Yeah, so what happened, folks, just to put this in context, my cameraman Lincoln and I, and by the way, a shout out to Lincoln, that was his first full day of employment. He did some freelancing for us in the past.
Welcome to the team, Lincoln.
Oh my gosh. And I have to tell you, what a way to make a splash. And he was absolute grace under pressure, because those dogs went lunging after him. Thank God he didn't get bitten. But he never stopped rolling, and that is the hallmark of a great cameraman. Kind of in contrast to Daniel Dale, the reporter for the Toronto Star, who was spying on Doug Ford from behind a fence in a vacant field in Etobicoke. And when Ford went running after him to find out who this peeping Tom was, because he didn't know who it was, Daniel Dale went running like a little girly man and dropped everything: his notes, his recorder, his iPhone. There's your Toronto Star reporter, as if Rob Ford, was ever going to do anything to him. But folks, I digress. The reason we were there was to show the dichotomy of Trinity Bellwoods Park. We have so many parks in Toronto that are being surrendered to filthy tent cities. And we got a tip from a viewer who said she was taking her 4-year-old to the children's park area. And there were 6 police officers there sifting through the sand because they had found multiple needles between the swings and the slide set. What I wanted to do originally was interview her. She would not go on camera because she feared for violent repercussions. At first I thought she was being a bit of a scaredy cat. Now I totally get it after what happened to me. And we were also there, folks, to point out the dichotomy that this is the park that in May started painting hundreds of social distancing circles on the acreage at Trinity Bellwoods Park. The idea is that you're only allowed a certain number of people within a circle. I think it's 4. And bylaw and police were patrolling the park looking for anyone breaching circle etiquette. And if you did, you get an $880 ticket. In the meantime, what comes up in this park is not, painted circles like so many UFO landing pads, but all these filthy tent cities, some of which occupy violent people with vicious dogs. Now, I want to be very clear about things because, Sheila, I try to read the comments, and there was a certain lunatic fringe of comments, I would say, that were saying, ha, looks good on you. This is what you get when you harass the homeless. Some people said on their property. No, it's public property. This was a monologue basically describing what I just said in the last 2 minutes, folks. I was only using the tent, and that particular tent, because it was especially filthy and unkempt, as a backdrop. I was on public land, as is this tent, violating perhaps 11 sections of the Trespass Act, but nothing to see here. And at no point did I harass that person. In fact, I didn't even know, and nor did Lincoln, that there were people in that tent. He came out. What wasn't shown in the original video, Sheila, is that he came out, and before he did, he kept saying, hey dogs, and I thought he was addressing other, campers in the tent, but he meant real dogs, in this case, mastiffs, 1 female and 1 male. It was the male that did the damage. Now, and then of course you saw the attack, and he seems to think in his entitled, deranged worldview, Sheila, that because we didn't ask for consent to film in a public place, that by law, he has the right to smash our equipment. Can you imagine? And he did do damage to the microphone when I tried to take it away. Now, the follow-up to this is, thankfully, I want to give a big shout out to the Toronto Police Service, at least on this specific case, because you could not ignore this. They did, within 24 hours, arrest him and his bunkmate, if you will. And he was also charged with assault because he punched my cell phone camera out of my hand. And the person you saw on camera, his name is Dean Edsey. He's 40 years old. He was charged with multiple things, including assault with a weapon, mischief, assault causing injury. And here's the amazing thing, I think, folks. I'm getting a whole new education on dog laws. That mastiff you see there on the screen, his name is Grizzly, and he's well known to Toronto Public Health, the Animal Control Division. He has bitten multiple people. He has been deemed a dangerous dog. Now, you think dangerous dog, that means it's put down. Oh, no. Apparently in Toronto, you can keep a dangerous dog if you abide by certain conditions, i.e. it must always be leashed, it must always be muzzled. As you saw, those 2 conditions were violated. But then again, Sheila, what would you expect? Somebody who I think has substance abuse issues, someone who is clearly deranged on the letter of the law, why would you allow this kind of a dog owner to own an animal like that is deemed dangerous? Do you think he's going to obey those rules and regulations? He's clearly not obeying the Trespass Act. And before we get into it, I should say, folks, I had an insider with the city get in touch with me about his history. He is violent. He has used his dogs sicking on other people, including other homeless in Trinity Bellwoods. And in fact, when he was arrested on Thursday and incarcerated, a group of other Trinity Bellwoods homeless went to his tent and smashed it down. His buddy came back on Sunday night and since re-erected it. So that is the story there, how Mayor Tory will penalize the makers, i.e. law-abiding, tax-paying citizens that just want to go to the park and do what you do in a park, suntan, have a picnic, toss the Frisbee around. If you get out of those social distancing circles, you're slapped with an $880 ticket. Meanwhile, we have deranged people with vicious animals that are breaking all the COVID rules, that are breaking the Trespass Act, and it's like, what you gonna do, boss? Sheila, I think this is egregious, and I see this happening in too many major cities in North America.
Yeah, John Tory, within 24 hours, mobilized the circle cops to come and paint those social distancing curling rings all over this very park because people were, like, peaceful people were having a little too much fun out there. And so he mobilized the city efforts to deal with a little bit too much fun happening in a park. And yet he has allowed an encampment of violent, mentally ill drug addicts with the lethal weapons of dangerous dogs to accumulate in this park, and he's done nothing. Yeah. And David, as much as I can't even watch you getting chewed by that dog. It's terrible to watch. And Lady Menzies must have just been beside herself knowing what happened to you, because I can't watch it, and I'm sure she likes you more than I do. But well, John Tory allowed that to fester. And as much as I like you, imagine if that were a small child. That dog would have ragdolled a child. And a child has business being in a park that these people don't.
Yeah, and you know, Sheila, I'm glad you brought that up, because this story, I don't want people to think it's all about me and boo-hoo, I was bitten.
No.
You know, that is true, and these wounds will heal. But this is a park used by thousands of Torontonians, many of them mothers and fathers bringing their children to the playground, a playground that is increasingly being littered with needles. It's just so disgusting. And I think that hopefully this might, well, I don't know how much hope I have in this, because that encampment is still there, that hopefully this will be a catalyst to get the ball rolling. And I think we have to look at some big picture things here, Sheila. Lincoln and I went back to the park to film an update. And, you know, when I speak about big picture things, I'm talking about going back to the 60s and 70s, because we know there was a sizable percentage of the homeless that are mentally ill. And once upon a time, I'm so sorry to use such politically incorrect language, folks, we had what was known as insane asylums. It was for their protection and ours. And people were put away. And then in the 60s and 70s, we had all kinds of new pharmaceuticals being released, Sheila. Yep. And the idea was, perhaps driven by a cost focus, is, hey, let's deinstitutionalize these people, and as long as they take their meds, they'll be fine. That turned out to be a big and catastrophic if, Sheila. And I think we have to go back to the days where we had this kind of incarceration. I should note, I did a monologue on this last year. This is how insane the political correctness is when it comes to people with mental disabilities. There was a man who walked out of CAMH, that is the Centre for Addiction and Medical Health in Toronto, which stands on the former grounds of the Toronto Asylum. And basically he was unsecured. This was a man, folks, that took a meat cleaver and chopped his roommate to pieces. He walked out of there, he got into a cab, went to Pearson, got into a plane and went to China without a passport. It's mind-boggling. Premier Ford weighed in at the time, and the words he used was calling him crazy, and I believe he used the word nutcase. And the media and political shitestorm that erupted, Sheila, Oh, no. Not about this murderer that uses a meat cleaver to dispatch his victims. Not the fact that CAMH has an open door policy, but the fact that Premier Ford would use such cruel, insensitive language to describe this person. I'll tell you, I went back into the dictionary and I looked up the word crazy, the definition, Sheila. That inmate met the definition. The point is, if we can't even use the correct language to discuss this issue, I am not hopeful at all that there's ever going to be a solution to the problem on the ground right now, Sheila.
Well, we're trying to motivate the city of Toronto to do something, and people can help us do that at taketorontoback.com, because Toronto should be, I mean, no big city is safe, but you should be able to take your children to a park without the threat of a violent, mentally ill, homeless drug addict using his mastiffs as a lethal weapon against you and your kids if you get a little bit too close. So, David, you have a petition calling on John Tory to not do anything extraordinary, just enforce the laws that are already on the books and, make Toronto a safer place for all Torontonians. And people can sign that at taketorontoback.com. But going back to your broader issue of, this problem with homelessness, and it's not a homelessness problem. It's a mental health problem. And again, there was this motivation for a more humane way, and pharmaceuticals were supposed to be the more humane way, and pharmaceuticals definitely do help. I'm not against pharmaceuticals. Problem is, with many of them that are for mental health issues, they do have terrible side effects. So as long as you're in the hospital and somebody's making you take pharmaceuticals, that's great. But when it's left up to you, you'd much rather avoid the side effects. And then you have people who end up in a cycle of drug addiction because they end up self-medicating. If you're bipolar, if you're manic, then you just drink to bring yourself down to equilibrium. And if you're low, then you get on meth to bring yourself back up. And they try to balance that through this horrible cycle of drug addiction that does nothing except continue to deteriorate their mental state. And it mushrooms into all kinds of other societal problems. Now you have to steal to support your drug addiction. You've been evicted because you used all your rent money for your drug addiction to deal with your mental health issues. And now you're living in a park with dogs and your dogs are biting people. And so until we deal with these mental health issues in a really substantive way, I don't think we're going to see a lot of change.
I think you're right, Sheila, and I think it's almost a political third rail to go back to the way things were. And by the way, I'm not talking about going back to, of course there were problems. Electroshock therapy has been debunked. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a humane way to incarcerate people that are a danger to themselves and to society. And I should add, Sheila, there's a federal angle to this. Two things. One is my city insider told me that many of these people receive disability money. Since the pandemic, guess what? They've qualified for CERB too. And this person told me that it's Christmas Day every 2 weeks. That CERB check comes in, and they immediately spend it not on shelter, not on clothing, not on food, but on drugs. That is, or in some cases, alcohol. The second thing, Sheila, as you well know, and as you've so brilliantly documented for years now, look at the added strain on our resources by our immigration policy when it comes to refugees at irregular border crossings like Roxham Road, where there are refugees, as in legitimate refugees fleeing persecution.
I'm pro-refugee, real ones.
Yes, and then there are those with designer clothes and designer suitcases walking across the border to game the system, and we dare not do any screening or ask any insensitive or impolite questions. That wouldn't be nice. And that is I'm just saying, we have enough of a domestic problem to get under control without importing people who are gaming the system under the guise of their refugees fleeing for their lives.
Yeah, we can do one of two things, but we cannot do both. We can have open borders, or we can have a substantive and effective social safety net.
Yep.
But we can't do both.
Correct.
They have to choose. Right now, they want to do both. There's no possible way that we can afford that. It's just how it is. And a substantive social safety net, it's an invitation if you don't have strict border controls.
100%.
Okay, we've got so many super chats because everybody is so excessively generous here at Rebel News. Coppa de Seo gives us 22 Norwegian crown.
Yep.
Today, Mark Glynn News, Rebel News, and Brother Tim. Fawking Guy gives us $10. If you join Parler and look at what's being shared, you can see videos of people being arrested for arson, people being caught and held at gunpoint until police arrive. This is not just climate change. Are you talking about the Oregon fires, the California fires? That's what two things are happening there. Two liberal ideas are converging at the same time to catastrophic results here. You've got crazy people setting fires to prove a point, and bad forest management. Green forest management, we should just leave the forest to do what they do. Well, forests, if you leave them to do what they do, they burn. Or you can do rotational logging and have young parts of the forest, so less likely to burn parts of the forest, intermingled as fire breaks with older parts of the forest. That's good forestry management if you're going to have people living within the forest. So that's what you're supposed to be doing. But when you go to anti-logging places and they just leave the forest alone and they don't realize the forests are a crop and people should manage a crop, then you just have these forests that have the ability to burn and burn and burn because everything is all the same age. So that's bad. And then you have crazy people who want to make things look like this is climate change. Look how the forest is burning because climate change, except you lit it with a match. And so there's several arson probes happening with regard to that Oregon fire. There have been people arrested as recently as September 11th. And yet Facebook is removing false claims that people are behind the arson fires.
Unbelievable.
So, untrue Antifa rumors waste precious resources from Oregon fires. But this is like literally one day after they say like an Antifa got on ABC News, they say a man charged with arson in connection with the Alameda fire. So,
but Sheila, and it's not just crazy people. I mean, just look at the other day when President Trump echoed what you just said, basically, about forest management in terms of being a preventive force for preventing these wildfires. And what did Joe Biden say? This is climate change, and ultimately the blame must be laid at the Trump administration, for not taking climate change seriously. That's garbage. That is just not true.
It's funny how Trump is responsible for all the problems in longtime Democrat-run cities and states. It's fascinating how the Republicans are responsible for the decisions made by Democrats in these states that are basically one-party rule for the last two generations, like since Reagan. I mean, and that's how long it takes for these sorts of bad forest management and bad environmental policies to manifest. It's been like this for a very long time. And instead of, like I said, interspersing old forest with new forest so that you slow the fire down and it acts as a sort of a break for the fire instead of the fire just blazing through old forest, they didn't do that. And somehow that's President Trump's fault. Somehow he magically went back in time and wrote Democrat forest management policies. It
is amazing, Sheila. And the Democrats, the left, when it comes to the climate change issue, they're always going, look at the science, look at the science. Well, the science that they provide, of course. Well, there is a science behind forestry management. Talk to the experts in that field. Why aren't you listening to them? And so that they can implement the kind of things Sheila Gunn Reid was just discussing a few minutes ago.
There's you can get a degree in forestry.
Yeah.
Like you can go to school and get an actual degree in forestry, and it's science-based. It's not like one of those feminist basket weaving masters where you're basically unemployable except at the Starbucks. This is a real job, and it's real biology, and it's real. I'm a farmer, so I would use the word agronomy, like management of crops, but it is it's a real thing, and it's necessary. But it must be great to be on the left because all your problems you could just blame on climate change. You have anxiety. It's not a mental health issue. It's because the climate is stressing you out. Like you're allergic to dairy. Oh, well, you're just not going to eat anything to do with cows because climate change, right? Like every problem you face in your life, someone else's SUV did it. It's a very neat trick.
And Sheila, I think you've stumbled on a good reason for why the left should get behind proper forestry management. You mentioned, feminist basket weaving. Well, if these forests continue to burn down, where are we going to get the wood for the basket weaving?
God, these people, they probably weave it out of something really gross, like their leg hair or something. Oh, no. Okay, let's keep going because I'm headed into dangerous territory. Cindy makes 7, gives us $5, and she says, "Oh my gosh, the owner obviously abuses his dogs." You know what? It is abusive to an animal to train them to attack innocent people like that. I'm not talking about police dogs or security dogs or military dogs or anything like that who are taught to chew on the bad guy. To teach your dog to be violent, you know what happens at the end of the day? That dog ends up getting put down eventually. Yep. And the owner's responsible for that.
Sure is.
MVP gives us $4 Australian, I think. Liberalism and mental illness go hand in hand. They do seem to have a lot of anxieties, don't they? Like you click on their Twitter bios, like when they're fighting with you or they're trying to fight with you, and you're like, okay. They have their pronouns in their bio. They have their mental illness in their bio. Sometimes their horoscope sign in the bio, and then resist, dump Trump. It's very formulaic what happens in these people's minds. It's like there's a checklist of things you can just go through.
And Sheila, I think that's a good point you make, and we'll show the contrast in a few minutes when we talk about your visit to Parliament Hill for the gun rallies. Here you have sensible, I would say mostly right of center people articulating their viewpoints with politeness. And yet, as you know, Sheila, all the Rebel staff, when we go to a leftist protest, it is profanity, it is the raised middle finger, it is sticking greasy hands in your camera, it is lunatics singing Disney tunes, thinking that's going to be a copyright strike and we can't air the video. They can't even say what it is they believe in.
Well, and even on the flip side, CBC did go to the rally briefly. They went kind of early because they don't want to show the enormous crowd that actually turned up. They went early.
Typical trick.
And they did an interview with Tracy Wilson of the CCFR because she's such an incredible spokesperson. But the problem is she's kind of a spunky, pretty little lady. And so if you want to portray this rally as old, miserable, potentially violent white men who probably beat their wives behind closed doors, she's kind of a bit of a narrative buster. Yeah. And so they did an interview with her, and then they did a story that said the CCFR declined to comment. And it's like, you BS artists, you stood in a crowd of 5,000 people. People have pictures of Tracy talking to the CBC there. Yeah, look, there she is talking to the CBC. And that never went to air.
They said she declined to comment, and you have a video right now of her being interviewed with someone with a CBC mic flash on.
Sorry, Justin? I didn't hear that. Oh, that video, I guess, is from Stephen C., who's watching the stream right now. So that's very helpful. But yeah, that video didn't go to air. And so even though, on the flip side, the leftists get violent with the right-wing journalists who are trying to do their jobs, the right-wingers at this rally went out of their way to speak to CBC, I guess to prove their own biases about the CBC. CBC is very helpful that way. They always help you prove your own biases about how awful they are, which they did. Tracy talked to the CBC. CBC didn't bring it to air.
And they lie by saying decline to comment, right?
Yeah.
That's outrageous.
I know. They're such BS artists. And that's why I went all the way from Edmonton, hopped a last minute flight. And if anybody knows anything about where I live, and you probably don't know too much, it is a jaunt to get to the airport. And then flying out of Edmonton to anywhere is an ordeal. It's like planes, trains, and automobiles. It's like you got to go to Calgary or you got to go to Toronto, and then you have a gazillion hour layover, sometimes at a strange time of the day before you can get to anywhere else. And so Friday, I just hopped a series of planes to get to Ottawa because we knew you can't trust CBC and you can't trust the mainstream media to tell the other side of the story. So we went there, and if people want to support our journalism on the ground there, because there were so many people. We brought in Tamara from Cobourg. Yankee came in from Montreal to help. Tamara had her husband there, just so that we had 2 reporters and 2 cameras at all times. They can do that at handsofourguns.ca. Now, I should probably catch up on these super chats before we get into that, because we only have 20 minutes left in the show.
What?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Cindy McSeven gives us $5 and says exactly what happens when the asylums were closed. And look, I'm not advocating for 1970s style asylums. I'm not advocating chaining people to their beds. There's a humane way to provide a better quality of life than living in a tent, hard scrabble, wasting away, mental health deteriorating, using drugs in filth and squalor. There's a better way for Canada's mentally ill. There just absolutely is. Kane Enmark gives us $2. I hope these dogs got put down, and the guy too. No, I hope the guy gets the help he needs, because he's obviously dangerously mentally ill. David, the fate of the dogs?
Oh, Grizzly, that's the name of the male, is in quarantine, and I think at the end of 10 days, it will be put down, because this was 3 strikes and you're out, basically. That's 3 reported bites. My source tells me, based on information from his own bunkmate, this dog has been involved in more than 20 bites on humans. I feel bad. I'm a dog lover. Like I said earlier, when these dogs were unleashed, my first concern was, oh my God, we're so close to Queen Street. I don't want them to run out on the street and get killed. But the large male Mastiff Grizzly is put down. The female is its mother. That is not going to be put down. But can you believe it, Sheila? When we went out there yesterday, the female Mastiff has been returned to Andre. That's the guy that knocked the cell phone camera out of my hand. And he was just freely walking, she was freely walking around the park, willy-nilly, no muzzle, no leash, business as usual.
That's terrible. Some kid is going to get mauled. Like that's, I mean, it's already mauled 3 people that we know of. It's going to be a child next. I'm just horrified at this. Robert Johnson gives us $25. Grab a coffee for everyone on Thursday. Oh, thank you very much, Robert. Let's all just be sure not to blame the dogs, though. They were just taking the side of their master. Yeah. Unfortunately, when you train your dog to attack, these are the rules. And I blame the owner. I blame the owner.
Me too.
For doing this to their dog. It's not David. It's not, it's not animal control officers. These dogs are dangerous, and that's something the owner did to them. Stay safe, David. And Sheila, seeing you so smiley is really nice. You know what? I love guns. I do. I love guns. I love gun owners. And so many Rebel fans there. Holy cow.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Oh, so many. So many. Like at one point I was standing in the middle of the rally as it was walking past, like the march. And I was just standing there with my camera so I could get the people in faces going by. And at one point, people are like, Sheila, like, I'm like,
Isn't that great?
Okay.
It must be somewhat humbling, isn't it, Sheila? I mean, it's so wonderful.
Well, one guy's like, Sheila, you're my hero. I'm like, you need better heroes, friend. I just took a big flight to get here, and I'm just standing here with the camera. That's not heroism. Sorry.
You know what, Sheila? That reminds me. I'm going to send you a link to a website, and anyone can do this. You go online. It's a quiz. You fill out this information about yourself, and it reveals what you're most like. If you were a superhero, who you'd be most likely to be. And there's also a component for supervillain. Yeah, Mr. says, what a waste of time. But I'm going to send you those links, Sheila. I want to see, you got to answer the questions honestly. I want to see what superhero Sheila Gunn-Reid is most likely to be based on her demographic information and her mindset, and what supervillain she would most likely be. So that we'll talk about that on Thursday.
Yeah, I'll take the quiz and report the results back to everybody on Thursday, and then we'll never talk about it again. Martin Sable gives us $5. Alberta is best. I think that's AB is best. If it's not, I'm just going to assume. Rob would actually clean that mess up, unlike useless Tory Rob Ford. Yes, he would.
100%.
Hope Sheila did not fly WestJet. No, I'm not in jail, so I didn't fly WestJet.
Woke jet.
Woke jet. No. Even though it was quite a gallivant to take Air Canada, we of course took Air Canada. Cindy Mc7 gives us $5. My pregnant sister and mom were attacked by pit bulls. Oh my goodness. Ooh. Owner gave the command. My dog protected them. Thank goodness. But I mean, crazy. I mean, these dogs are lethal weapons when they're trained this way. This should be the same as brandishing a firearm on someone.
Absolutely.
It really should. There's a lot of Gustavius II gives us 50 SEK, the Swedish kroners, I think. My country, Sweden, is heading the same way as Australia. We got an Andrews of our own, the Swedish Prime Minister. Oh, you guys were sort of the example to everybody, though.
That's right.
So I'd hate to see your country going that way, because you were really the country that did it differently.
That's right.
And showed us all that it could be done without the catastrophic devastation to the economy. Cindy Mc7 gives us $5. Mayor Tory is a globalist creep. Vito Anthony D gives us $2. How about a eulogistic post-mortem of the Crafters? David, did you watch?
Did I watch the Game 7?
Yeah.
No. I'm sorry, folks. Sheila and I discussed this briefly before. I'm kind of turned off almost all the sports. I want to see football or basketball being played. I don't want to see national anthems being disrespected by people taking a knee, or the teams staying in the dressing room like the Bills and the Jets did on Sunday in Buffalo until the anthem was played. Then they come out. I don't want to see that crap. I don't want to see Black Lives Matter written on the court and on the field, because yes, Black Lives Matter, as all lives do matter, but there's a very murkiness here, Sheila. Are you subscribing to the lives of black people mattering, or is it a matter of you subscribe to this Marxist anarchist organization, which has been brilliant, Sheila, in promoting this narrative because it makes it politically incorrect to attack. But behind it, what do we know about Black Lives Matter? We know they are Marxists. We know they are anarchists. We know they are anti-Semitic. And yet this is like a sacred cow. And the only sports I've watched this year was the third period of Game 5, Leafs and the Columbus Blue Jackets. I felt like a captain going down with a ship. I just had to see the more than half century of Leaf misery play out. And so it did, as the Leafs, once again, a Stanley Cup team on paper, were eliminated by the Columbus Blue Jackets. I only did that as a matter of loyalty. One period of one series. As far as the sports is concerned, I'm done.
Yeah, it's a very big turnoff to know that, like, I think for most people, you watch sports as an escape from the like daily tedium of politics being rammed down your throat. And like for you and I, we exist in the world of like the politics and the culture war. So sports is supposed to be your reprieve. But as I was starting to say, it's a really big turnoff to flip on the TV and then all of a sudden, now these rich crybabies, these highly privileged crybabies are lecturing you about what they think they know about human rights when they don't even have a Google search's worth of knowledge about it. These guys, as I've said before, these guys with their Nike sponsorships lecturing the rest of the world about what lives matter and human rights, I don't want to hear it. When I know that Nike has been identified as using Uyghur slave labor in their supply chain, it's such a turnoff for professional sports. I've accidentally, through osmosis, watched half a hockey game this year because it was on in the pub behind me when I was out for a drink with one of my girlfriends. And I watch rodeo because there's no like political correctness infesting that. I watch NASCAR, especially now that Bubba Smollett's gone. And of course, I watch wrestling. And that's about it. It's sent me to the like sports entertainment realm as opposed to actual sports. Actually, you know what? These are actual sports. I'm not going to say that. Yeah. These are actual sports. These are highly trained athletes. Some of it is performative. I mean, rodeo is such a hard slog. These guys in rodeo, you don't get paid to show up. You only get paid to win. And you only get the big money if you continue to qualify to get to the big rodeo. That's it. So these are really like journeyman athletes that taking a toll on their body. I appreciate that. And they work hard. It's one of those like they only reward winning, not playing. And so I like that NASCAR, they're purging themselves of the social justice and, wrestling. It's fun.
And Sheila, what you said too about how unknowledgeable these multimillionaire and even billionaire athletes are, that is a truism, I'm afraid. LeBron James, he went right from high school to the NBA, a multi-million-dollar contract. LeBron James is now a billionaire with a B. And this is the guy we're taking our talking points from. This is the philosopher king that we defer to. I mean, give me a break. It reminds me, and also the sportscasters and the sports writers of today, Sheila, it is so disheartening. It is just so many social justice warriors, even on right-leaning newspapers. This is a bastion of leftists, and you can't even read the stuff that they're writing. It reminds me of the late great Dick Beddoes, the Hamilton sportscaster out of CHCH back in the 70s, and he had a great line for the sportscasters back then, which is now on steroids now, which is he was talking about their fawning over athletes as turning. I'm trying to remember the quote. They were trying to make tin plate gods out of cast iron jerks. And that is the athlete class of today, 100%. And by the way, LeBron James, do you think, Sheila, he lives in these communities that he's saying to his followers, burn down and property damage isn't violence. And this includes mom, pa, black-owned businesses that are getting destroyed? Horrible. Anyways, Mr. Producer saying super chat. Super chats
because we have to get to the gun vid, and I can't really go overtime today because I have actually I have to film the gun show for tomorrow. I have to do that right after. My guest is I'm 11:05. I'll be there. I promise. So I'm going to breeze through a couple of super chats and then we should go to that. Mimi Jovanovic gives us $5. Was driving north on the DVP. How's this for Alberta, but knowing what I'm talking about, the Don Valley Parkway. South of Eglinton, naked meth head coming out of the bushes as I drove by. The hills are filled with tents. It's very the hills have eyes, isn't it? Derek G gives us $5. Marxist believes that men who attack David is the victims of capitalism. Yeah, and not mental illness. Pink Phoenix Nails gives us $5. 20-year-old who was originally declared a COVID death in Alberta with no pre-existing conditions was changed yesterday to not a COVID death. Yes, he was changed yesterday to not a COVID death. And apparently he did have pre-existing conditions. So that was one of those that was counted wrong and they had to go back and readjust it. But it's pretty strange how the media just really, really, really wants young people to die of this. Like they just are so excited for young people to die of this, because then they're like, we'll get to shut down the schools, we'll get to close down the nightclubs and lock everybody back into their houses. So they're really like, it's kind of ghoulish how they're hanging on these deaths of young people to prove how dangerous the disease is to young people when really it's not.
Incredible.
Cindy McSeven gives us $5. Need their own buildings, crazies, drag them into the ER, and we have to suffer for hours listening to them. Yeah, if you've been in a hospital on a weekend evening, it's not pretty. And Elisa S gives us $2.79. So glad you are okay, David. Yeah, me too. Adam Clark, $6.99. That's a perfect way of putting it, Sheila. Forests are crops. What kind of farmer doesn't tend their crop? Love you guys. Exactly. Flat Earther gives us $2.79. Search the Prof 369. Jet fuel doesn't melt steel. Okay. Bernard Hutchinson gives us $2.79. Trump wins massively or loses massively. Which one? I think he's going to win. I think we've got. I think the amount of silent Trump voters is even greater than last time, because the violence against Trump voters is even greater than last time.
And Sheila, I'll tell you where the glimmers of hope are. There was a wonderful Mark Levin show on Sunday where he interviewed Candace Owens, and she was talking about how many personal, not for publication emails and texts she was getting from Hollywood people who say that it is career suicide not to join the blackout and the BLM movement, but I'm voting Trump when it comes because I see through this rubbish. That's fantastic. Anyway, carry on.
Flat Earther gives us $2.79. Gives us the Quarantine Act of 2005. I think we discussed that once before on the show. Flat Earther again gives us $2.79. Search the Prof 369 Instagram and the Real News channel. Kevin Tennant gives us $5. My Sane Hour, you guys rock. All the best to you, Sheila and Dave. Keep up the excellent work. We definitely will. Cindy McSeven again. So happy you're okay. David, stay safe.
Thank you.
The missus must have been horrified. Kenneth Melnichuk gives us $6.99, and then he gives us another $6.99, and he gives us another $6.99. Says Happy Worldwide No Mask Day. Flat Earther gives us $13.99. Can you search and debunk Flat Earth on YouTube? How about, and then the Quarantine Act of 2005, read it all, ID 2020, Antenna Bubbles in Space, Astronauts on Wires, IHR 2005, and lots of punctuation. I will Google it just because you donated. I definitely will. And that is it. We're all caught up. 4 minutes left in the show. Maybe we can show a clip from the gun video.
Let's roll.
I knew you guys would be here.
Today, Rebel News is in Ottawa. We're actually on Parliament Hill for the Integrity March organized by the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights. Now, the march today is to, quote, demand integrity from our politicians and in the decisions they make. Canadian gun owners want a safer Canada too, and we demand credible work on crime and violence. Now, it was a long way to come, all the way from Alberta, and my last-minute flight was expensive. My friends and Rebel colleagues Tamara Ugolini and Yankee Pollock are here too. Yankee drove in from Montreal, and Tamara came in from Cobourg. Now, if you'd like to help cover the costs of our flights, travel, and hotels, to bring you the other side of the story, because you just can't trust the mainstream media, to be honest about the people protesting on the Hill today, please go to handsofourguns.ca. Let's wade into this enormous crowd and find out why they made the trip to Ottawa today and what message they have for Justin Trudeau and his band of liberal gun grabbers.
This is the first march on behalf of gun owners, or an organized one, since like 1998. So really appreciate it.
Why did you come to the Integrity March with your family?
With the family. We're here because it's important. It's important that Ottawa sees that the OIC can't stand, that the firearms owners are not just simple targets, and we all need to stand together. So we're here with 500 or 600 of our closest friends to show Trudeau and the Liberals that this just can't go on.
Why did you come down to the Integrity March today?
Fighting for our rights, our sport, which you could possibly lose. I'm an airsofter, and he's even got airsoft rifles on the prohibited list. That doesn't make sense.
Oh, we have to come. We have to show Canadians that we're all Canadian and we all believe in everyone having equal rights. People want to play.
Was that accurate, Sheila? Airsoft rifles are.
Yeah.
What? I didn't know that.
And there's a 410 bird gun on there. So like a 410, you would be hard pressed to kill a crow with it. But because it was black and scary, it made it onto the list. A 22, which is just like a Bud Light plinker. That's all that is. I mean, they were arbitrarily reclassifying things, and they continue to do so using that order in council. It's, a firearm here, a firearm there, even after the fact. Even after the initial 1,500 models were reclassified, weeks later, they were still adding things to the list, sneaking things on. So if you're not paying close attention, you are a paper criminal right now, while a lot of people everybody right now has amnesty. We have 2 years before we're technically criminals because we haven't turned in our guns. But yeah, that's the situation right now. And, there was 5,000 people on the Hill by the time it was all said and done. We have Tamara and I have, she did her coverage. I did my coverage. I mean, there was just so much to cover while we were there. People from all walks of life, like mums, dads, business owners who are telling me like, look, I had to lay off a third of my staff because I'm sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars in inventory that I can't sell. And so like the trickle down implications of this thing that was pushed through in the middle of a pandemic outside of Parliament is catastrophic to the firearms owning community.
And that's the benchmark. If it's an airsoft rifle, if it's a bird gun, if it's black and scary, it's got to be banned. Under that criteria, Sheila, maybe Justin Trudeau should ban himself. What I think is black and scary is Justin Trudeau wearing blackface makeup and groping females who don't want to be groped. So ban yourself, Justin. There you go. Put yourself on the list.
We are at 11:01. I'm going to finish up these last super chats. And then unfortunately, I can't go overtime today because I am talking to, I'll give you a sneak peek, Yukon Strong. So if you're a gun owner, you know exactly who he is. DJ Sumanik. He's Yukon Strong, and he's a strong advocate for the firearms owning community, and he's the guest on the gun show tomorrow. So I promised him I'd Skype him by 11:05 my time. But we'll finish up these super chats, and if people want to support sending Tamara and Yankee and I all the way to Ottawa to make sure that somebody got the story straight, because CBC sure as hell didn't. They reported hundreds of people were there, not thousands. You can do that at handsofourguns.ca.
Beautiful.
MEC gives us $5. What do you think Canadian MSM or mainstream media wants to harm citizens? You're both awesome. Thank you. I think they just want you as Canadian citizens to be just dumb and pliable. Bernard Hutchison gives us $2.79, says, we missed your first super chat. How? The first one that we can see is Bernard Hutchison, $2.79 at 12:38 p.m. Ontario time. Trump wins massively or loses massively. Which one? If it's not that one, I'll make sure that we get to it on the next show. B. Bappas gives us $5. You need to check out Strong Cities Network member cities. Okay, I will. And that's it. It's 11:02.
Well, there you go, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. An extra special thank you for all the super chatters. Your money is what keeps the lights on, and we greatly appreciate that. So on behalf of Mr. Producer Justin and Sheila, the She-Devil Gun Reid, I'm David Menzies. We will see you in this space at this time on Thursday. Have a great day.